are live. Welcome, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. This is podcast 22, the answer to any habit sticking, as we continue our habit series. We are joined by many, not all, but many of the RN Body Transformation coaches. That would be my right technically, but for you, it might be my left. Charity Rogers. We're joined by Rachel below me, Rachel Benz, yeah! And we are joined by my diagonal, Sharon Chamberlain, yeah! All amazing people. What I really want to do today is just talk a little bit about this idea of how to make any habit stick, mainly around this frame. How I believe that the answer is not to get more discipline. It's to create an environment that reduces the need for willpower in the first place. So that's what we're going to be talking about through specifically the main mechanics that we need for weight loss. Eating in a caloric deficit, getting enough sleep, and exercising. And then maybe even if we have time, we'll talk about some sub-mechanics that can lead to results as well, listening to empowering content, journaling, and stuff like that. So I'm going to do my best not to just talk over everyone. I want to make it so that you guys can benefit from all the coaches we have here today. But I'll start us off so we have a kind of a spring point. So I believe that, and this might be a bold statement, but I believe that people that are seeing themselves as, an athlete, or they are just fit people or healthy or whatever definition they want to give themselves for their identity, I do not believe that they're any more disciplined than the person who is not doing those things. I simply believe that they have over time built habits they are pulled to simply because that it goes back to the main point of they get low pain and high pleasure from these actions. Now, if we're thinking about how to set up our environment for that, that's what we're going to be diving into today. So, any thoughts on this to start before I absolutely just keep talking? Any thoughts? Charity, Sharon,
priming your
Rachel.
environment for success is so important. Make it easy for it so it feels like a slide instead of a climb.
Oh, I like that. What would be some ways if we're thinking about, and you can choose any of them, right? I mean, exercise, caloric deficit, or sleeping more. How would you start to create your environment with one of these things for success?
Starting with sleep, I guess. Prime your bedroom for success with that. Darken windows, maybe some calming music, bed sheets that you actually want to fall into, and or having change of clothes, because sometimes that can just change your mind into, oh, it's time for sleep. Having some healthy habits when you roll over in the morning. Maybe have your little mantra or affirmation right next to your bedside to remind you what you're doing when you wake up. Have your shoes that you might trip over on before you step out the door to remind you for movement.
You just laid it down. You just laid it down. There was a lot of things you mentioned there. If we were to pick one to kind of just maybe the biggest lever, I mean, I know it depends on the individual, but what's like a big lever out of those things that you think would help generally?
A big lever that would make you want to go to sleep more? Is that what you're saying?
No, not necessarily. A big lever, like if you could only choose one or maybe two of the 5 or 6 things that you just mentioned, what's one or two you'd start with that you think would have the biggest effect?
A quality bedtime routine.
Quality bedtime routine. So let's dive into that a little bit. What does maybe that look like? What's a quality bedtime routine?
Knowing that you're setting yourself up for success, like as far as maybe a half hour before. So you set an alarm, turn off your screens, change your clothes, wash your face, but just have like a set routine that you're kind of trying to wind your body down before you go to bed.
Beautiful.
And do some loving things for you. That's where you can throw in some self-care, or if you want like a little motivational quote before you go to bed, or a gratitude practice is a really good way to close your day.
I like that. So what you're saying is really setting up a repeatable practice of 30 minutes before bed. Just happens every time. Doesn't matter if it's a weekday or a weekend. It's kind of a non-negotiable.
Or if it's morning or night, right? If you work tonight for mornings, right?
Makes sense. It's, hey, 30 minutes before bed or even 15 minutes before bed. It's like you're doing these 3 things. As you said, you're reducing the lights. You're, getting rid of the electronics. You're reducing them. What else?
Changing your clothes if PJs help you feel more in it. If you like to smell something that's relaxing like lavender. Or if you like to read something before bed, have your faith routine if that's part of it.
I like it. A lot of good stuff here. We could keep diving into that, but you've already mentioned a lot of stuff. I know Rachel and Sharon, she mentioned so much, and we can repeat what she said, but what would be important Sharon, we'll start with you. What would be important as you're thinking about optimizing your environment for sleep?
Well, I was actually taking it the next step.
Okay.
Whether someone works out first thing in the morning or if they work out later in the day, it's setting themselves up for that. So if you work out first thing in the morning, again, you want to set yourself up. You don't want any obstacles. Like, you want it to be as easy as possible. So you remember when you were a kid and maybe your mom or your dad set your clothes out for you. I mean, I still do that now for my workout clothes. So my workout clothes are ready to go. My shoes are there. If I'm going somewhere else, maybe to work first, or if you're not working out at home and you're going to a gym, that means that your bag is packed. That includes your sports bra, right? If you're a woman, make sure you have your sports bra and your socks. So many people show up and they're like, oh, I forgot my socks, I can't work out. Well, no, you still can work out. You're just not going to be quite as comfortable. But you have your water out, or whatever you're taking to work with you or to the gym or wherever you're going, you have everything set up so there's the least amount of friction between you and getting either to the gym or to work or wherever. So you have all of your clothes with you if you're not wearing them. And if you are going to work, depending on where you live, like the climate, don't leave after you do this once, you'll remember not to, but don't leave your clothes in the car, because if you have the clothes in the car all day when it's freezing or below freezing outside, and you get finished with work, you're proud of yourself, right? You have your gym clothes in the car, you drive to the gym, you pull them out, and you start to put them on, and you're like, oh my gosh, right?
It's just freezing, yeah.
Right. So
that's quite demotivating.
Yeah, so don't do that. It's just thinking ahead. It doesn't take long, but whether it's more sleep or going to the gym, you just have it set out.
So it's really reducing the headwinds, right? It's like, how can I make this as smooth as possible, as you said, and potentially even add tailwinds to it? I love that. So we've talked a little bit about sleep. We've talked a little bit about exercise. Rachel, do you want to talk about nutrition then? How to set up your environment to eat in a caloric deficit?
Sure, that was not what I was going to talk about. But
okay. No. You talk about what you were going to talk about then, and then we'll
no, it's okay.
And then we'll piece it together.
I was thinking just a little bit about even like a step before the exercise piece about how do we habit stack and how do we create spaces, especially in a week like this where it's a holiday week and we're going places, we might be doing things out of our routine. But how do we create intentional movement, even if we can't get to the gym this week because of whatever is happening? It's about how do we create those small movements throughout the day? Like, we're brushing our teeth, we're having our coffee, we're doing things that we are still going to do. Hopefully you're still brushing your teeth and drinking your coffee if you drink coffee. But how can you then create those intentional movements into that? Can we do 10 squats while you're brushing your teeth before or after or during, or you're waiting for your coffee to brew and you are doing some push-ups or some jumping jacks or whatever that might be, but tying it to something that you're already doing so that we can create those small movements. Because I think some of that, sometimes exercise feels so daunting when we haven't even started yet, but if we can just create those small pieces. And I also think, so you did ask about caloric deficit. I do think for me, it's about, this sounds backwards, but it's about adding, not necessarily subtracting. But if we have our plate and if we can add nutrient dense, caloric, not dense, that's not the right thing, but caloric, but
high volume. Yeah.
So we add greens or we add cauliflower or we add broccoli or we add whatever it is to that Thanksgiving meal that is less caloric dense, but our plate still looks full.
Yes.
For me, it's about adding the things first, and then your plate has less room and your stomach has less room. So how do we add, and thinking about adding before we think about subtracting? So
no, I love that. I think one thing mentioning, that I'd love to talk about with the exercise as well. I feel like a lot of people are very focused on this idea of like, okay, well, I want to do the thing that's most effective. So sometimes when we hear like, okay, yeah, but 10 jumping jacks, what's that going to do for the result? And honestly, the answer is not a lot, but it's for what it's going to do for your headspace. number one, of course, like when you move your body, you get your blood flowing, you're going to feel better in the moment. But secondarily, like you said, if you can get over that, like, oh, exercise doesn't have to be daunting. Like, I can do exercise anytime. Okay, well, I'm going to build up like you're saying, 10 reps. Well, now I'm going to do a minute. I'm going to do 2 minutes. I'm going to do 3 minutes. And then before you know it, now you are built up to whatever it might be. And that's where you start to get the benefit. So I think sometimes people look at, well, the action, and they go, well, that action isn't the thing. That's not going to be enough. So I'm not even going to do it. But it's like, well, then you just stay at 0. And you never get into it.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing about 1% better. So if you do 1% better every day for the next 365 days, that's a whole big bunch. I can't do the math,
insane.
But that's a whole big bunch rather than doing 0, right? So 0 adds up to 0, adds up to 0, but 1% plus 1% plus 1% adds up to, again, a lot more than 365, whatever it adds up to after the end of the year. So
there it is right there. I mean, we look at that. It's crazy. 1% better every day. Just 1% is a 37x improvement in the year. Yeah. Whereas a 1% worse is, a lot worse.
Or 0 is 0. I mean, that's right. We don't even want to think we're getting worse, but if we do nothing, it's just nothing.
Right. Yeah. I think that's well said. So, we have a sleep, we have exercise. Talking a little bit about the caloric deficit. I made some videos about this today that I'll be releasing shortly. But when we're thinking about setting up our environment to eat in a caloric deficit, I feel like going off what you said too, instead of just focusing on decrease, it's increase. So having foods immediately available that are attractive but high volume. So whether that be your things like your carrots with your, let's say reduced calorie ranch dressing or whatever it is, or for me, it's fruit. I could eat I know this is going to sound insane. I eat half a watermelon every day. Now you might be thinking to yourself, no, you don't. I remember there was this one time when I was in health class when I was in 7th grade. We had to track all our food for a day. And I went in the next day and I said, I ate a whole cucumber. She goes, no, you didn't. And I'm like, no, I really did. She's like, no, you didn't. And she didn't believe me, man. But that's what I do. I just I'll eat a ton of something. And eating those high volume foods can be a great way to keep your calories down too and not feel deprived. One other piece to this too, before I open it, is don't be afraid of salt. Now, I'm not here to say yo, hold it up, baby. Let's all have heart attacks. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is a lot of people, when they think eat healthy, they stop adding salt. Sodium is necessary for survival. You need it. We need it for ATP ATP firing, right? To be able to create energy. We don't want to eliminate salt. And a lot of times when we're eating healthy foods and they don't have enough salt, that's where the craving comes in for these potato chips and whatever. Where instead, you can just take the salt and toss it on those vegetables, right? Toss it on, when you're cooking, or toss it on my dad's go-to snack is, because he's been on the weight loss journey for a little bit now. Now he's retired. He's got no excuse anymore. He does cucumbers with salt. Salts them up. He eats a ton of them, and he's pretty satiated. But what are some of your thoughts on these things, guys?
I mean, I would agree with the salt piece of it, especially if you are decreasing the amount of processed foods you're eating. Then if you're just eating pretty clean foods, then adding some of that salt, because I am much more of a salt person than a sweet person anyway. So yeah, that is, but again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say for sure that is a good thing, but making sure that you're getting enough of that, so that you're right, because you do need that in order for your cells to work. So
100%. Sharon, Charity, anything to add?
I say berries. Have fun with berries if you're a sweet fan. Go with the dark colored veggies or fruits, because they're so good for your body, your brain.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the berry medley is by far my favorite late night confection. It's my guilty pleasure. I'll throw 2 cups of berries, and, we could argue that oh man, 0-calorie foods have, sweeteners and, harmful chemicals, very potentially. Or yes, right? However, it's always going to be the lesser of 2 evils, in my opinion. So we always want to weigh things out. Is that something that we want to have forever? Potentially not. But what's the alternative? You know, Ben and Jerry's. Well, then have the low calorie whatever option, in my opinion, right? Because then you elicit all the benefits of being in a caloric deficit. So, I love the 2 cups of berries with the low calorie, even just like a spray bottle of whipped cream, and like you could go through that whole can of it, would be like 2 bowl sizes of it, and it'd be like 100 calories. You only use maybe like 10 to 20 calories in one of them, so you get this whole like full bowl. Like this is the bowl I use. There's some nuts in it right now, but a full bowl of berries, whipped cream coming in. The whole thing's like, I don't know, it's like 200, 220 calories. And you don't need to eat this much. You don't have to have my portion, but just little strategies like that, having those foods available. And then I think secondarily is that idea of, well, let's not have maybe the foods that are going to be super attractive that are going to be higher calorie, low volume at, arm's width. Because this idea of willpower, I think, is over. I can't think of the word. I don't want to use the word dramatized, but it's this idea of like everyone wants to have willpower and they want to like push through, but like that doesn't happen in real life that often. What happens is you're feeling a moment of weakness, and if the pain is or the effort is this low and the pleasure is this high, you're just gonna do it. And like that's at least what happens with me. Maybe I'm the exception. I don't know if you guys agree, but in my house, there are no foods that are off limits. We eat ice cream and cookies and whatever. We just don't eat it in the house. So if we want ice cream, we're faced with one of the 2 things, or we don't keep it in the house. We're faced with one of 2 options. We either have to go to a grocery store and buy ice cream on the spot, which takes 20 minutes there and back. And it's like, that takes a lot of time. So I'm increasing the effort threshold. Or I'm also essentially setting myself up to where we have to go to an ice cream shop, reducing my frequency that I'm going to do it. So I don't know if you guys agree with that or have any thoughts on that as well.
I've read too that you have to make your own stuff. If you want ice cream and cookies, then you have to make it.
Oh, clever. Yeah.
And then the other thing on berries, try them frozen too. Like even frozen grapes, just maybe changing up how you intake some of these foods too might make it more fun for you. And
That's
slows
so
you
funny
down
you say
with
that,
frozen
Charity. That
berries.
is my new favorite, my absolute new favorite treat is frozen grapes. Not even with like I heard about it like rolling them in sugar or something, but I didn't even do that. I just froze them. And I'm like, that is okay. I'm 51 years old, and why am I like finding this out today? Yes, last week I just started. I'm like, this is my new favorite treat. So love it. So because you can't eat that many frozen grapes, or it takes you a little while. I could eat a whole handful of grapes just eating them, but frozen grapes takes you a little while to chew through it all, and your mouth gets frozen, then you can't talk. Whole other story, but my new favorite thing. So,
Clever. Sharon, I saw you nodding as well. Have you done that?
No, what I was thinking was, another way to look at it if you have a craving is there are 2 different things that came to mind. One is trying to combine what Rachel said earlier with what you think is a craving. Number one, a lot of times people think that they're hungry and they're really thirsty. So look at your water intake throughout the day. The other one is what I started to say about what Rachel said was building on that. If you want a cookie, okay, like you're going to eat the cookie. If you're going to eat the cookie, you're going to eat it. But tell yourself, okay, then I need to do 20 push-ups before I eat this cookie.
So it's like kind of pair the food with something.
Yeah, at least you're working for it. You may not be driving to the store to go buy it, but you're doing something that in your mind, depending on who you are, like whether it works for me, it doesn't matter. The question is whether it works for you. And if that's what works for you, then do it. If drinking water does it, do it. If making it yourself, like Charity said, do it. Or driving to a store, like Ryan said, do it. Create that habit.
Yeah. I think that's a great point too. Is like, this isn't one size fits all. This is test and iterate, I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's how we find the thing that's going to work for you. And usually it's a medley. No 2 people are exactly the same. It's just pieces that make a similar looking puzzle, but it's different. Another thought that comes to mind is the ultimate interchangeable orange snack guide that were created a while back, where You can also food pair. So it's like what Sharon said, hey, if you want the cookie, you're going to eat the cookie. But it's like, cool, eat that cookie, whether it's, let's say, I don't know, 3 chips Ahoy cookies, if that's what's there, but then pair that with something that's high volume. Like a big go-to is like chocolate and peanut butter, right? So it's like you can have, let's say, two snack servings of 170 calories. Did I put chocolate on here? I don't see it. Chocolate. We got M&Ms, chocolate. I think it's about 1 ounce. Yeah, I think it's about 1 ounce of chocolate is about, it might be like slightly more, like 1.2 ounces of chocolate. And then you combine that with any of these high volume foods, 3 cups of berries, 4 cups of popcorn. The 3 cups of berries are great because who doesn't love strawberries and chocolate? But you were going to get so much more full off of the 3 cups of berries and 1.2 ounces of chocolate than having 2.4 ounces of chocolate or whatever it is, right? So I'm with you. Any other thoughts? Because obviously we could go on and talk for years. Any other thoughts on kind of these ideas about setting up the environment for success? I like it. Thanks for joining, guys. I will see you guys soon, and enjoy your holidays if we don't make another one before then. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Take this time to be with family. If there's any just send off, it would be to enjoy yourself. A lot of times the holidays are followed by guilt. And what I'm here to say is just a quick zoom out. If we look at all of the days in a year, even if you had a whole day on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even if it was 10 times a year, or even, and I'll say 12 times a year, even if it was 12 times a year that you just went off the crazy rails, and 300 and let's say 50 of the days a year, you're like still locked in, you're on track 97% of the time. So like, just go enjoy yourself. Drink your water so you don't maybe feel sick the next day, but just have fun. Don't worry about the calories. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but if we can focus on the big levers, which is the everyday, and then just allow the events to take care of themselves, you'll be fine. So you can still have an amazing body that is healthy, that you love to look at, that you love the way you fit in clothes, following something 80% of the time. So cool. Awesome, guys. Hope you have a super great day and enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Cheers.
Bye.